So the onset drama with Blake Lively is exactly what happens when you set a boundary and it is taken as a personal attack. And I am sure you have been in her shoes. So in case you have been living under a rock, a quick synopsis of what's going on. The reports say that Blake set a series of professional boundaries with Justin Baldoni. He allegedly didn't take it well and unleashed a smear campaign to break down her reputation just in case she ever talked publicly about what happened on set. Now, whether or not this is true is not the point. The point is that this is a textbook example of what happens when you set a reasonable boundary with an emotionally immature person. Now, this doesn't just happen in Hollywood. This happens in our everyday life. Like, take the mother-in-law who shows up unannounced again, and instead of letting her in, you decide, no, I'm gonna mind my boundary and keep her on the front step. And so you just say, oh, Doris, today's not a good day. Can we plan something later this week? Now, that's not what she hears, though. What she does is she hears something completely different, turns around, leaves, and tells everybody and their brother that you slammed the door in her face and told her you never want to see her again. Or how about the father-in-law who is playing with the kids well past their bedtime? It's time for him to go. So you're like, okay, time to wrap up. He doesn't hear you trying to get the kids to bed so they're not cranky the next day. He hears something completely different. So he responds in a huff, accuses you of ripping his grandkids away from him, not wanting him to be a part of their lives. Like, it's just wild. Like, why do they have such big dramatic reactions to the smallest, simplest boundaries? Well, in order to understand that, we have to talk a little bit more about emotional immaturity. There are lots of classic, like, hallmark signs. I'm just going to talk about a few of them. One of them is their vernacular is pointed inward. It is all about them, how you impact them, their feelings, their needs. They do not consider how their behavior is impacting you. The next thing is they think in extremes. Black, white, all good, all bad. You're either with them or you're against them. So that means taking accountability. That feels awful to them because it's not just taking accountability for one small error in judgment or one behavior. To them, it's like saying they are all bad, and that would feel terrible, like they're a rotten piece of trash. And so instead of marinating in that feeling that they feel like they cannot handle, they do anything to avoid it. They deflect, they dismiss, they defend, they just go crazy, and they concoct wild stories, things that are not even true, to make you this big bad villain and them this meek little victim. And then they take that story and they go and tell everybody they can what happened, like their narrative. The other thing about them that is very classic is their feelings rule their world. So when they feel slighted, humiliated, rejected, or abandoned, that's reality for them. That's why they respond in really big ways when they're told no. Like they truly feel injured. But if you think about it, who else in our life, when they are told no, respond in big, dramatic, uncontrollable ways? Young kids, right? Just think about if you have, children, just think about when they're really little and you tell them no, like on the floor, just flailing. Yes, it looks different with the adults. Like, thank God they don't go on the floor and like flop around like fish. But if you think about it through that like lens, it's pretty similar. So how do you react when, somebody comes at you after you set a simple boundary with an emotionally immature person, and then that wave of emotion comes because they feel like they're reacting really big because they feel like you're rejecting them? Well, I respond the same way I did when my kids were young. I stay calm, I reassure, and I just repeat my limit. And I just keep doing that until it's over. And yeah, it can be very exhausting, but I don't get caught up in the drama. I don't get spun all around. I don't have them like scramble at my brain. I just don't try to reason with an unreasonable person. It goes nowhere. But what do you do when they're army? Because remember, not only do they come up with like wild stories, they actually go tell everybody they can, and they accumulate people for support. But what happens when that support comes at you and starts accusing you of just unthinkable things? Well, what I do is pretty similar. Like, I don't get caught up in the drama, but I speak my piece. So let's say your aunt calls you and accuses you of threatening to beat up your frail dad, when what actually happened was your dad came over, tried to force entry into your home, and when you blocked the door and didn't allow him to force his way in, he felt humiliated, turned around and told the whole family that you threatened to beat him up. Well, in that circumstance, I always have empathy for people coming at me, accusing me of things, because that's the story. Like, just think, if your aunt heard that story about her brother, she'd be like, oh, I can't believe you're going to do that. So she's coming like to try to defend her poor brother. So you have to have empathy for that. But this is what I would say. I understand that is the story you heard, and that would be so upsetting. I want you to know that that didn't happen. I also want you to know, like, I'm hurt that you didn't give me the benefit of the doubt. Like, you know who I am. So, like, going forward, please just pause and think about things that I'm being accused of doing, and like ask yourself, does that align with the person you know me to be? So I don't get involved in the drama. I correct it, but I also remind them, like, this is who I am. It's really just standing firm through the storm. You don't fight the wind, you just stand firm and wait for it to pass. Like, I just thought this was such a good example to just bring out, talk about it, and I would really love to hear your stories. Like, if you have ever set a simple boundary with somebody that is emotionally immature, and before you knew it, you woke up in a bad soap opera.